It's been a summer of heartache in both senses of the word for Sheffield United because after losing the Championship player final to Sunderland, having led initially but losing in the last minute to that brilliant Tommy Watson strike that sent Blades fans home, broken-hearted, they had to suffer more bad news later in the summer. Well, depending on how you look at it, but certainly difficult to take news in Chris Wilder, the club parting company with Chris Wilder over differences over recruitment processes. I think it's difficult for me from an outside perspective to imagine Sheffield United without Chris Wilder as manager, given that they've had him for much of the last 9 years because although they did have a brief stint where they won promotion from the Championship under Paul Heckingbottom, much of that time they've had Wilder at the helm, and because he's such an emblem of the football club, if you like, it's going to be difficult to imagine a different person at the helm, and also difficult for that different person because Ruben Selles comes in. I think he's shown great people qualities at Reading to navigate some of those political challenges, if you like. And I think he did that really well. And I think that skill set's going to translate really well to Bramall Lane. But more importantly, he is a fantastic coach, especially from an out of possession pressing perspective. But most importantly, from the board's point of view, he's aligned with the recruitment strategy. But is this AI approach to recruitment risky? Is it a little bit too far left field for Sheffield United when they could have done with some simplicity, having got to accumulated 92 points in the Championship last season? Or is it a visionary move that's going to benefit the football club in the long run? I think I can see both sides, so plenty to get stuck into on this summer deep dive. And I'm delighted to be joined by Ollie Mann from the Sheffield United Way. Ollie, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. A lot of heartache for Sheffield United this summer, and how far are you on your journey of kind of processing it all, I guess?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I know you said to me earlier in the summer, like, "Oh, do you want to come and talk about United?" And you just received like a flat no. Nah, I'm all right, mate. Don't worry about it.
I felt like I waited because initially I had these kind of a lot of the some of the players I'd kind of penciled in before the playoff finals. But I think quite sensibly, if I say so myself, I felt like maybe the evening of the playoff final defeat isn't the moment to text Ollie about
in the car on way home. When do you want to do next season, mate? I'm all right. Phone out the window. Yeah, it's been a funny one. It's been a weird summer for us in a lot of ways, in all honesty. It's taken me so long. I was talking to the lads from Not the Top 20 the other day, and we were sort of reflecting on the season just gone. And they said, "Are you looking forward to next season?" And my immediate response was, "I don't know. I'm not emotionally there. I feel like I'm still sort of on a come down. I think back to the playoff final, and you covered it there, and I just think, how did we not win that game? Why am I sat here doing another Championship review? I'm so certain we were so good.
You could have been on the overlap.
I'd have been on the overlap, and they'd have said, "Are you looking forward to the season?" I'd have gone, "God, no, it's going to be awful."
So yeah, from a couple of years ago.
That's exactly it. It would just be me sat in Nick's seat, just oh no, it's going to be awful. But no, we get over it. We move on because you have to. And yeah, it's been a weird summer of quite a lot of change. Obviously, Wilder leaving, I think, caught a lot of people by surprise. I can't say it caught me off guard, in all honesty.
No.
I think I did.
Well, do you know what it is for me, Ollie? Because you signed. I'm terribly sorry, I've completely forgotten who you signed right at the start of the summer while Wilder was still in charge.
Some Bulgarian. He's going to sit in under 18s. I won't worry about it.
But I sort of I think Wilder, the official club kind of went to Wilder for comment. And he said something like, "This is another player that we've signed from our recruitment
model."
Yeah, exactly, our recruitment model, and we're looking forward to developing. But he didn't say a thing about the. And I reckon Chris Wilder didn't know a thing about the player, so it was almost like he probably approached and it was like, "Oh, okay, just say something generic." But I think that kind of summarises how disengaged he may have been from the recruitment policy in terms of, okay, if you want to see that, that's over there, and if somebody turns out to be decent, we'll take him on, but give me the players that I want kind of thing. I think was probably his approach to it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that sums it up perfectly, because I think there was probably this kind of, we saw it in January. Chris Wilder got the players he wanted. And then there were 2 AI signings who came in that nobody knew anything about. And between January and the end of the season, we never saw the AI signings. I think Nwachukwu struggled a little bit at first in terms of getting a work permit. Cathereth played a little bit for the under-21s and did get on the bench. I think it was Stoke away, but didn't get on the pitch, didn't play any football. And I think it became clear that the deal had been, bring these players in all you want. I'll use them only if I want to use them. And clearly that's it's not the way the owners want to operate. They want us to be moving forwards. They want to try and use this new recruitment model as what they see as being the future for Sheffield United. And so, rightly or wrongly, and whether I agree with it, whether I don't agree with it, we have to live with it. They're the owners we've got. And if this is the way they want to go, what I would say is, on the emotional side, on the kind of reflecting back on the last 12 months, the last 10 years, it's really sad to see Chris Wilder go. And it is gutting in that you lose this kind of huge part of the squad, huge part of the club, huge part of sort of what you've been in love with for the last 10 years of your life. But also, if the club aren't pulling in the same direction, we need a club that are working together to the same aim. And it felt as though we could never have that with Wilder. And if you said to me, you've got £30 million to spend this summer, how do you want to spend it? Do you want to give it Chris Wilder and tell him to pick his players? Nope, that terrifies me. Don't want that at all. Whenever Chris Wilder's had that amount of money to spend, it's not ended well for Sheffield United, shall we say. We look back and Ollie McBurney, good player, signed for £20 million, left on a free. It's not great. Ryan Brewster signed for £20 million, left on a free. It's not great. Sander Berger signed for £18 million, left for, I think, £17 million. We're not making profits on any of the investments he's made with the significant funding that he's been allowed to spend. And so I think I can see why we wanted to make a change. I could see probably starting in sort of March, April time, there was a rift coming between the manager and the owner. So, I see why they've made it. And I can see why, looking forward, they want everybody on one page and they want to implement their vision. I get it. I understand it. But it is a bit of a gut punch after already having the biggest gut punch. So, we'll see how the summer goes, see how the season goes. It's not really knocked in terms of positivity. I think hopefully we should still be looking at a really good season in front of us. We just have to hope that the AI model is as good as it's being sold.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I do like about Ruben Selles that gives me some optimism about how he's going to handle some of the politics of this situation, if that's the right word, because I do think there's going to be a degree of that, even with the best will in the world, is there was a situation at Leyton Orient where I think Reading had, they might have lost there and been bottom of League One at the time. And because the Reading fans, they're furious with the owner at the time, Dai Yong, but weren't able to speak to him. So almost like the players and the staff were the kind of the outlet for it. And what Ruben Selles did at Leyton Orient, we went over to the away end, got all the players with him, and just stood there and took in what the Reading fans were shouting and singing or whatever. And then for about a minute, and then after that went into the fans and shook hands with them. And he handled that. And I don't know whether Reading's upturn in form came right after that moment, but I think it was pretty close. And it was like that ability not to rush in and try to speak. Because I think if he'd done that, I think he would have aggravated the situation. But because he waited, it was absolutely brilliant, because then the fans had got it out of their system and then they were actually open to having a real conversation. And so handling it with a bit of empathy, I think, is a really useful skill. So we can talk about his technical ability as coach, but I think he's got some soft skills that I think could be really useful.
Yeah, and he's going to need to rely on them quite a lot, I think. And I think he's going to have to also have a thick skin. And I think you have to have developed that thick skin working for, obviously, Hull, working for Reading. So hopefully that's going to stand him in good stead as well, because United we're a funny bunch. We are. And we're a weird group of fans. And, there are some out there, if you follow Twitter, if you look at some of the social media, there are people who just seemingly want to be angry about the decision. They want to say, it's ridiculous. Selles is bound to fail. All these foreigners that come over and manage United are going to fail. And I think it's really important that Selles gets off to a good start. I'm quite excited for him. I've heard, listened to what Reading fans have had to say about his style of football, the way he got them playing, that kind of exciting transitions team as well that were always fun to watch. I'm looking forward to that. It's different. United last season were attritional. We weren't good to watch. I enjoy winning games of football. We all do. Everybody has a lovely time if your team wins. You kick off at 3:00 on a Saturday, at 5:30, you sat at home, eating your dinner, you've got 3 points in the bag, you've had a good day. But it weren't a massively enjoyable 90 minutes. You would sit there thinking, this is dull. Are we're winning, aren't we? Yeah, 1-0. Brilliant. Right. What next? And so I think it's going to be a lot more entertaining for us to watch. I think we're going to enjoy Saturdays and watching United. And so hopefully that's going to translate into results and into the crowd. And the crowd are going to really buy into what Ruben's trying to do with the club now. I think the risk is if he doesn't start well. And this is a huge concern for me, is that if Sheffield United aren't top of the Championship come October, I think there's going to be a lot of noise coming from the crowd about, well, is this really what we've sacked Wilder off for? Why are we not as good as we should be? We should be better than this. If Wilder was here, we'd be top of the league. If Wilder was here, we'd have been promoted. And he's going to have to overcome that. There's going to have to be, on our channel, one of the things we talk about so much is patience. You're going to have patience. Let Selles come in, build his squad, get them playing the way he wants to, and give them time to build what they're moving towards. But a lot of United fans don't have that in mind right now. It's emotional, it's raw, but it's also if you're going to change something. If Wilder was Sheffield United manager, I would be sat doing this preview telling you that without question, Sheffield United is finishing the top 4. I would guarantee it. I would bet you that United would finish in the top 4 because I would be so confident. However, with the change we've made, I now see a variety of options that could happen. If you told me we were going to finish 11th, I'd go, I can see it. And if you told me we're going to win the league and get 105 points, I'd go, yeah, I can see it. And it's that kind of range. I feel as though we've gone from I know exactly what to expect from United and where we're going to finish, to a vast, we could be rubbish, we could be brilliant, who knows how it's going to go. And if it doesn't start brilliantly, I can see the crowd turning quickly. So, yeah, I think Selles' man management, the way he's able to manage a crowd, his experiences from Reading, they're going to be absolutely crucial in steadying the ship, shall we say, at Bramall Lane and sort of getting us on that upward trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to, ideally, you'd probably want to follow the guy who follows Chris Wilder rather than follow Chris Wilder.
Yeah, you want to be Paul Eckenbottom and not Slavisa Jokanovic.
Exactly, yeah. So, where was I? I think I'm really excited about what Ruben Selles can do from a pressing point of view. Do you feel like you've got personnel? I'm thinking not Fraser Campbell, Tyrese Campbell. There you go. Do you feel like you've got personnel who can seat that?
I think Fraser Campbell was a fantastic presser, but I'm just not sure he's still got it in his legs these days, to be honest. But Tyrese might be all right. It's an interesting one because I am really excited by the style of play that Selles is going to want. But there's 3 really key questions for me. You are not going to turn Gustavo Harmer into this pressing animal. That just isn't who he's going to be. He's not going to be the man who does this high-intensity pressing machine that Selles is going to want United to be. So what's his role going to look like? And actually, are we planning as a squad to cash in on Gustavo Harmer? That's one of the big questions remaining for the summer is not even come the 1st of August, come the 1st of September, is Gustavo Harmer still going to be a Sheffield United player? And if he is, what is Selles going to adapt in his system to make up for the fact that he's not going to be pressing with the intensity of the rest of the squad? The second question for me is I think Tyrese Campbell will buy into it, and I think he'll be a real problem for lots of teams. But physically, can he maintain that intensity over a 46-game season? We know that he can't. He couldn't maintain last season's intensity for 46 games. He got an hour in him for a half to 2/3 of the season. And that's what you have to expect from him. And so the question becomes, how do we want to utilise that? Do you want to use Tyrese Campbell high intensity for 45, 50 minutes and have him pressing everybody here, there and everywhere? Or do you try and use Tom Cannon to do that role? He does the early running. He does the kind of movement in behind, trying to stretch the defenders. And Tyrese Campbell plays the last 30 minutes. And then you just use his pace to burn. And you really hurt teams that way, particularly with the transitions that we know we're going to be trying to develop. Tyrese Campbell could have a field day in that kind of last half an hour against tired defenders. So I think there's a real question about the centre forward and about the fitness of what United's squad is, because Campbell and Harmer were probably our best two players, particularly in terms of, creating chances, scoring goals. They were the two that we hung everything on, but they don't feel a massively natural fit to what Selles is going to want to do, because Harmer's, like we said, not a pressing machine, and Tyrese Campbell will likely not be able to do it. So how does that change? The final one is the one player who I know will be perfect for what Selles wants, for pressing, for energy, for excitement, is Callum O'Hare. He is going to 100%. He will press every man and his dog. If you put him next to Harmer, he could do his and Harmer's running at the same time, because we know he's got that in him. But if we start to play a more traditional 4-3-3, if we even adapt to the 4-2-2-2 that we know we've used sometimes previously, what's Callum O'Hare's position? Where does he play? He's not playing on either wing. He doesn't feel a central midfielder if you're playing him alongside Ollie Arblaster and Siddy Peck. What's his role? And so for me,
Ollie, I'm just wondering on that. What about, I want to hear the rest of that, by the way, but just on that Callum O'Hare point in particular, could he play on the left of a narrow front three?
But if he plays on the left of a narrow front three, where does Harmer play?
Left side of midfield, if it's 4-3-3.
Yeah, I suppose you could. I suppose the dependent on that is, from what I've seen of Selles teams, and maybe I'm interpreting this wrong, but I've got the impression we want proper wingers. I've felt as though we're looking for players who are going to be more out-and-out wingers, trying to get down the width, get down the line, put the ball in the box, really causing problems through that front.
But can I just come in there, Ollie? Because I also think Ruben Selles' sides like to press with a front three. I think for that you need the wide forwards to be quite close to the striker, otherwise the press gets a bit disconnected. But yeah, I take your point on board. Callum O'Hare, you'd much rather him as a number 10. He's a number 10, isn't he, Callum O'Hare, naturally? So
yeah, it just feels a little bit like the style we're going to want to play. I don't know which of our players fit it. And so I am expecting quite a bit of change through the summer over the next few weeks to see, well, what is this style going to look like and who are going to be the key men in the system? The other question, the final one that I had around how the system's going to play, is that obviously the other sort of staple, I suppose, of Selles teams is that his teams are pressing quite high. He wants you to make sure you're going through. I think it's the famous quote from, is it Charlie Good, where he says, you don't press and stop when you get to the man. You press through the ball.
Yes,
the next man is then pressing up behind him.
100%.
Which is really exciting, can force those mistakes. But it means that in certain scenarios, they might get through the first line of your press quite quickly, which brings them then into your midfield. And then you're starting to look at, okay, how are we going to settle around and behind that sort of front line? And we've just lost Vinny Souza, a huge player for us last season. His physical ability, his sort of positional awareness made United really difficult to break down and play against. As it stands right now, if you were able to press through, all of a sudden we've lost all physicality in our midfield. Blaster, Peck, if it's Harmer, if it's O'Hare, whoever it is, we've not got any physicality or height. And so I do worry a little bit about what the transition of that sort of midfield is going to look like, particularly early on in the season. And what happens if we get that press, somebody plays through us? How quickly are they going to be exposed against our back line? Because, yeah, we are missing quite a lot of bite in that midfield right now. And so there's some big questions to answer for how the squad makeup starts to come together.
And ideally, you'd want to be having this conversation at the start of June with plenty of leeway to add to the squad and bring players in, as opposed to early July when you've already got a lot of players, I think, under contract, Ollie.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we've got the majority of a squad. I know as well, one of the big things when we look at the transfers is obviously we've made massive deal about this sort of AI model and how we're going, but we've used all of our, are they called ESC spots? I think we've got one spot left And we've used 3 of them on 3 players who clearly are going to be sort of development signings.
You're going to be signing Jimmy Dunn from QPR now, aren't you?
Yeah, I know. We're going to end up with Jimmy Dunn.
The AI says like who Chris Wilder wanted.
Yeah, we'll get Ollie McBurney back on a free. We'll get Jimmy Dunn in. It's going to be a completely makeshift team, but it's going to look interesting. So, yeah, I think it would have been nice, I think. And I understand why we didn't. But I think if the decision was being made for Wilder to leave, we probably could have made it 2 or 3 weeks earlier. Got Selles in 2 or 3 weeks earlier. And we might then be having this conversation about more of a finished squad than we've currently got. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is very much, you know, what's the word? This is first world problems, isn't it? Because, you know, there'll be other people. I look across the city and we are suffering with first world. Oh, no, we've lost our £13 million central midfielder. What are we going to do? Like, we have got plenty to play on with there, and we can build this into what I'm still expecting to be a really strong, really competitive championship team. So don't take this as if I'm saying it's all a disaster, we're going to be rubbish. But there is just quite a bit that we need to do between now and the 1st of August to make sure this squad is where we want it to be and to give Selles the best chance to succeed. Because that's the big thing for me, is I think Selles will get it right over 46 games. But I think if we've not given him the squad he needs on the 1st of August, he won't get 46 games. He'll get about 6. Because if we don't do well in August, he'll have lost all the patience of the fans by September.
Yeah, well, the fans and probably the board as well.
And then the board. You've got it.
Yeah,
we have established ourselves. We've almost set a baseline. 92 points and not getting promoted isn't good enough. So it's very clear what the ask is of Ruben Selles now. It's play your nice football, but more than that, it's get promoted. And if we don't get promoted, then it's going to go on his CV as a failure because he'll get the sack for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the best goalkeeper in the championship in Michael Keeper.
Yeah.
No debate about that now. James Trafford has gone up to the Premier League. I'm
still having Victor Johansson, Gab, if I'm being honest. But yes, we've got the best goalkeeper in the championship all round. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, brilliant. So, are you confident you're going to keep hold of him?
If the numbers that are being talked about on Twitter are true, because obviously we keep getting suggestions, Everton are really interested in signing Sheffield United's Michael Cooper. And there's 2 questions that immediately come to mind is, why do Everton want to sign a goalkeeper? They've got one. Leave us alone. But the second is that people are talking like 5 million, 6 million. If that's the kind of numbers that we're currently hearing, then yes, I'm certain he'll still be our goalkeeper come the sort of end of August. Because unless somebody is going to triple that, and start to look at £20 million, I don't see any reason that we'd look to move him on. Obviously, he's signed a long-term contract last season. We're in a real position of strength. We've always got him as an appreciating asset. So if we have another 12 months and we don't get promoted, that is not going to affect the value of Michael Cooper because everyone knows that he's the best goalkeeper in the championship. So, yeah, I think he will still be. I'd be shocked if he's not still our goalkeeper for 46 games next season.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Michael Cooper, a big one to build around for Sheffield United. In terms of central defence, Ollie, I guess the big task is to replace Harry Souttar, something you didn't do in January. You've got to do it this summer, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm still like spitting feathers about the fact we didn't replace him in January. It's the one thing, if anyone's ever listened to me speak over the last 6 months, the only thing that I've ever heard come out of my mouth is, why didn't we sign a replacement for Harry Souttar? It's cost us promotion. That's
I've not listened to anything else you've said, Ollie. I just do it.
I don't speak any other sense. That's the one sensible thing I say, and everything else is rubbish. But yeah, we've got to find somebody to come in and be that really big physical presence. You know, I really like the signing of Tyler Bindon. I think him coming in and sort of stepping into this squad feels really positive. And I think, you know, when you look at what Selles is going to want, that gives us 2 really good ball playing centre halves with Bindon and Ahmed Odzic. So they are in a pretty strong position to sort of then build forward from there. But we need that physical specimen. We need the behemoth that was Harry Souttar to come in and really just settle everything down. So I'm still hopeful that we'll see another centre-half come into the squad. There is still a question about whether Anel's going to leave. He's entering the last 12 months of his deal. And so if we want to get some value for Anel, we probably would have to sell him this summer, because unless we get promoted, I can't see him signing a new contract. So yeah, I'm expecting some centre-half work. I like what we've done so far. I think Binden's really exciting. Now I just want somebody who's 4 inches taller than him at 6'7" to stand there, head it and kick it. They're the only rules. Get one centre half in. All he's got to do is head it and kick it, and then we'll be all right.
And hold a high line.
And hold a high line. Yeah, admittedly, that's something that Harry Souttar might have got caught out with if we were trying to catch a high line. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I love the man, but a high line defence was not ever going to be his strong suit.
His high line is more up there.
He's got a tall line. Yeah.
In terms of right back, then you've got Alfie Gilchrist, who started, who was on loan from Chelsea last season, and you've got Harry Clark. So talk to us about his importance.
Yeah, both of them obviously were on loan last season, so returned back to their permanent clubs. I think as it stands, the only permanent right back we've got is Femi Sirike. So I think he's, as it stands, almost our default starting right back. There are rumours, though, that we're out there looking for another one. I would expect us to try and be bringing somebody in. Obviously, last season was really disrupted. You know, you've referenced it there. We started the season with Alfie Gilchrist. He was on loan from Chelsea, did brilliant until January, and then we just never saw him again. We brought in Harry Clark, played about 3 games, and admittedly looked shaky, shall we say, then got injured. We never saw him again. We ended the season with Hamza Chowdhury as our starting right back, but even he's gone now, returned to Leicester. So yeah, we are just reliant very much on Femi Sirike as it stands. Jamie Shackleton should be coming back from injury, but yeah, it's a position that we need some recruitment in. And I would expect us to bring somebody in the not too distant future, because it's a real hole in the defence. I love Sirike. I think he's brilliant. And actually, I think it'll be really exciting for what Selles is wanting us to do, because if there's one thing we know Sirike can do, it's press high, use his pace, and use his physicality to trouble defenders in their own half. The problem is he's not great going back towards his own goal. And so we'll have somebody who needs to come in to be a defensive right back almost, who can cover that position, who can almost be the antithesis to what Femi Sirike offers to the club at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. It could see a loan move possibly for Femi Sirike if the right options come in, but that might be later in the window. So right back, definitely a big priority then. Talk to me about Harrison Burrows, Ollie, and the importance that, because he really got better and better as last season went on, didn't he?
What a player. Yeah, he absolutely grew into the season. He very much is one of our key men now. I don't think I've seen any rumours. I think I'm expecting him to still be a Sheffield United player, which is good. The one player I can hang my hat on and go, yes, he will be here, definitely. And he was fantastic as the season went on. You know, as it started, we were expecting this all-action attacking wing-back almost, and we didn't know quite what to think he'd do in terms of stepping up defensively. But by the end of the season, he held his own against some of the most difficult wingers in the league. He was making sure that he'd lock down that left-hand side, and he's just going to be outstanding for us going forward. I think it's going to be interesting to see how his role transitions a little bit more, because again, you know, depending on how we want to do it, we referenced earlier, maybe we're going to want inverted left winger again, because that was the staple of his season last year. Is he was strong defensively, solid on his own, but also he was covering the attacking sort of width for the club, because Harmer would invert and we would have so much space coming down that left side. And I think it'll be really interesting to see if we go down the same route and we almost use him entirely for the width on the left, or if we're going to start to get him a partnership, get somebody in front of him he can interplay with, who are going to cause different kind of problems for the opposition. And so he's one of our most important players. He established himself last season, and I think with another 12 months, he'll probably be the best left back in the league. You know, other than the teams coming down, I don't think there's anybody else who would be sort of competing with him at the moment, because he was just a class above last season, and we know already that the Leeds players have gone, the Burnley players have gone. So yeah, for my money, best left back in the league right now, and I think we'll see him get even better over the next 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of somebody who definitely did get better and better last season was Sidney Peck, and I think he got. Did he get injured at the back end of last season, or is he fit for this season?
No, he should be fit for this season as far
Okay.
as we know. He's gone on the pre-season tour. There were pictures of him having a laugh on the bus, as he always likes to do. So no, he should be fit and raring to go. I think it's a really interesting one with Sidipek, because obviously the other player that we're expecting back is Ollie Arblaster. And so I think seeing how those two, are they going to be a partnership? Is one of them going to have to sort of sit on the sidelines for the other one to flourish in the squad? It's going to be a really interesting discussion around that, because I think that's one of the big question marks we've got. Do we play them two together and see what they've got? But that's missing quite a lot in terms of physicality, in terms of experience. That's two players who have had maybe one professional season. Both of them will have played, I imagine, less than 50 professional games. And so, yeah, it's a big question mark to ask. But I also think they're possibly two of the most exciting young talents that we've got. And I'm expecting both of them to go and achieve very big things and to go on to the very top of the game.
Yeah, I love Sidipek's ball carrying ability and the sort of progressive side that he's brought to Sheffield United.
Tell you what, if he could shoot, it'd be unbelievable. That's the one criticism of his game. The man's never going to score a goal. As soon as he gets towards the 18-yard box, you can see it in his eyes. He's like, I'm going to score. And then he inevitably miskicks it nowhere near.
It's a tiny speck on Peck's CV.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's what we need to work on this summer. We need to get rid of the speck on his CV, and we need to get him just consistently shooting from 18 yards so he can learn how to find it and put it in the back of the net.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think Ollie Arblaster, I suppose, from shooting from his point of view, is the clue in the name, I suppose.
Yeah, indeed. You're on fire today, Gav. Yeah. You're on fire. Yeah, Ollie Arblaster, I don't think he's going to be fit at the start of the season. I still think he seems as though he's got some work to do. I could be wrong, and I could be misinterpreting what he said. So I was at the Not the Top 20 show in Sheffield last weekend, and Ollie Arblaster was one of the guests who had a little bit of an interview with the lads. And yeah, it sounds as though, I think his words were, he's on the grass, but I'm not sure he's doing the full training as yet. And so
depends what he's doing on the grass. He might be
he's just mowing it. He just goes on. He's mowing it around. He's playing with his blocks. He's fine. He's having a lovely day, but he's not quite there yet. So I think he's still got some work to do to get back. So obviously a really serious injury for you to pick up, particularly in that obviously breakthrough season that he was really having for us last year. And so we want to see him get back. We want to see him back to his full fitness. But I do think he's probably, I've thought about this a lot over the last 12 months. I think he probably is the more exciting talent when stood next to Sidipek. I think he's got a little bit more about him. We saw him contributing goals and assists in the few games he did play last season. I think he'll be captain as well, in terms of as soon as he comes back into the squad, he will be captaining the team. And so it'll be really interesting to see how that starts to develop. I want to see him back as soon as possible, because he could... Well, there's already been rumours that Liverpool were looking at him, that some of the really big teams across Europe were thinking about whether or not they wanted to bring him in. So from United's perspective, it's probably meant we can keep hold of him an extra 12 months, the fact that he has picked up the injury, but obviously really sad that he missed so much of last season. We've got to get him back in the team, because I think he will be a really important player for us.
And especially with those question marks over the midfield that you mentioned, it would be quite important to have somebody, a key cog in that midfield available. Any young players at Sheffield United that are up and coming that could do a Sidipek of this year?
It's a difficult one. There's nobody who's jumping out to me. There's nobody who I'm currently sat there and I'm saying this guy's going to be the breakthrough this season, and I expect him in the first team. But I think that comes with the pressure of being at the top of the league. And I think I almost look at the squad and I think, we've got some really talented young players like Ryan One, who had impacts off the bench last season. Players like Billy Blacker, who was coming through the academy, looks really a really good talent. He had a few minutes in certain games last season, again off the bench. But do you want to throw them into a high intensity promotion push, especially in a season that's as important as this one? Because one of the things we've not touched on yet is this is our last summer of parachute money. Like, it runs out. If we don't get promoted this year, there's no parachute money coming from the Premier League. It's all got to be self-invested. It's all got to be raised through player sales, well, maybe we'll get a TV documentary and sell ourselves to some others in America, who knows? But for now, we've got to raise all our own money. And so, yeah, I don't see really the opportunity for many young players breaking through this season. I think it'd take a really big injury crisis for us to be throwing players into that kind of environment. Similar to what happened for Peck, you know, he was one of those players who had Arblas not got injured, had Tom Davis not been out injured. He probably wouldn't have been in and around the squad. It came as a complete surprise when he was not just playing, but flourishing. And so I don't want to rule players out, but it seems unlikely right now that there's anybody quite ready to make the jump in the same way he did last year.
On the other hand, that I would kind of challenge that slightly, Ollie, because I also think that Ruben Selles does have a very good track record of working with young players. He did it at Southampton. He worked with a very young squad at Reading. I think his high pressing methods require lots of energy, which you'd argue lends itself to young players as well. And especially if to facilitate that style, you want to rotate both between games and making substitutions during games, that might expand the squad a little bit, and some of those youngsters might sneak in there.
Yeah, it could give them an opportunity. It might mean that those midweek games when you've gone Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, or, you know, given how Sky seem to be, Friday, Monday, Thursday, or whatever we end up doing. So there's certainly an opportunity where some of them, you might start to see them getting in the squad. But I do think that I would expect us to recruit quite a big squad anyway. I think we'll have quite a lot of, I don't want to say adults, but quite a lot of adult professionals who are ready to step in. I think if we were looking at any, there's the young centre-half, Jamal Baptiste. You know, again, saw him a little bit last season. If we don't sign another one, if we don't end up with our Harry Souttar replacement, he's one who we might see sort of popping up here and there on the bench. The other one who maybe, I suppose, is most like Sidney Peck is Owen Hampson. Really good season for the under-21s. He's been on the radar now for a couple of years where he's had breakthrough, really good combative goal-scoring midfielder. So he gets quite a lot of goals for the 21s. So he's probably one who, if we are going to be trying to pull players out, and if we do think that Selles is going to be looking at the academy and going, yes, these are the players and this is the pathway, then there may be two other names that we could look out for. But I personally am not certain that they're ready at this time, shall we say.
Okay, a few loan moves out. Are we expecting a lot of
I'd expect maybe going out to Chesterfield, going out to Doncaster, those kind of players where they can develop themselves. Louis Marsh is another player who's come through the academy, but as I understand it, he's looking to move on this summer. I think he's told the club that he doesn't want to spend another season on the bench, so I would expect a potential permanent move for him.
Actually, you mentioned Doncaster. They've probably got a manager in Grant McCann who has a similar playing style to Ruben Selles. So I think that could be a nice loan place for some clubs, for some players. In terms of additions then, are we expecting a fair few? Are we expecting a bit of movement in the next week or two?
I'm expecting us to spend a lot of money. Now, I don't know who we're going to spend the money on. I don't think, and unless there's any like football manager players who want to throw names out, I don't think anybody can predict what United's business is going to look like. But I do expect us to do quite a lot of it. I think in particular, the players that are most being named are Ashley Phillips, centre-half. The suggestion is that he would be that kind of physical Souttar presence that we're trying to replace. So I would expect to see potentially some movement on him. I know Tottenham originally wanted to loan, and I know that the new manager, Thomas Frank, wanted to have a look at him. But yeah, he's one that we seem to be pushing quite hard for. Teammate Alfie Devine, he's also at Spurs at the minute. Yeah. He's another one who we seem to be trying to get a little bit of movement with. Whether that's a loan or a permanent will probably depend on Tottenham. But yeah, it's being suggested that we'd be looking at around 6 million for both. So 12 million in total, just to be clear. That's not 6 million and you get two players. So we'll see whether or not there's any movement on that front. Other players, we definitely need central midfielder. Walter Berger is the link at the moment from Stoke. Think he'd be a fantastic addition. I think, you know, it's really hard to stand out in that Stoke team, but Berger has basically played central midfield on his own and still managed to have almost a highlight reel in terms of how good he looks. Gives us more physicality. He's 6'3". He's just a little bit more of a presence than we've got at the moment. So I think he'd be a really good addition. And then the others, who knows? We need wingers. We need a right back. We probably need cover up front, but I doubt we'll get that. I think we'll be putting a lot of weight on Tom Cannon's shoulders this season. I don't think we'll be recruiting anybody else to back it up. I think it's going to be a Wilder's spent the money. We've got to get something out of this player. So be interesting to see how that goes. But yes, I think it'll be a very busy next 6 weeks for United between now and the end of the window, where we spend quite a lot of money to try and make sure that we don't miss out again.
Yeah, big season, I think, for Tom Cannon. Hopefully he has a good pre-season to get himself into a good fitness shape, and hopefully he can show some of that quality he's shown in the Championship previously.
God, he needs to. He really needs to. I think as well, though, for Tom Cannon, you know, I've slagged him quite a lot over the last 6 months because he'd come into United and he just did not have anything like the impact you need from a £10 million striker in a sort of promotion race. It didn't work for him last year, but there is still positives there. His movement is outstanding. We weren't finding him with the passes, and ultimately, he's not got the pace always to deliver on his fantastic movement because he can get beyond the defender, get the pass, and then be running in treacle for the next 30 seconds. But if we can get him fit, get him used to our new style of play, start building him chances, we know he's got a good shot on him. We've got to try and play to his strengths to get the most out of him. And this could be a massive season for him. And I'm quite excited and optimistic that we will see the best of him, hopefully, over the next 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So fingers crossed for Tom Cannon. In terms of expectation, Ollie, because I think from a fan base point of view, I think the bar has been set very high, and there is definitely going to be a significant section that didn't want Wilder to go, and me to subconsciously, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously perhaps.
I don't think it's going to be subconscious. I think it's going to be very conscious.
Okay. Either way, certainly you maybe use that against Selles sometimes if things that don't go to plan. I'm wondering about from the board's point of view, though, Ollie, because do you think that it is as clear cut as what you said earlier that we've sacked Wilder after getting to 92 points and therefore the bar is automatic promotion, or do you think there is a degree of we're actually willing to pivot and no?
It's hard to know because they've not come out and made lots of personal statements in terms of their expectations or what they're looking for. I think as a club, American owners don't come in and buy a championship team to say, oh, well, you know, this will be all right. They've come in because they thought Sheffield United were going to get promoted last season. They expected us, when they bought us in January, they expected us to get promoted and we didn't do it. I think it's very clear from them that they'll be expecting us to get promoted again. Now, I'm not saying that that's automatic promotion or done, but we do not win the playoffs. So it's automatic promotion or done. You finish first, you finish second, or you might as well finish 12th because there's no point in finishing anywhere else. And so it'll be interesting to see how that develops through the season. I think they will be saying to Ruben Selles, look, we want you to transition. We really want to work with you. We're excited about the new direction, but you've got to deliver immediate results. We've got to get promoted because otherwise the financial hit to the club is too big. So I think there's probably a realism where people will understand that, you know, for me, there's 5 teams who I currently have in my head as these are the 5 clubs. If we finish above 4 of them, we'll be promoted. And we've got to be, Leicester could be anything. They might be an absolute disaster. They might end up with a massive points deduction. They might get away with it like they always do, spend another £200 million and be fine because that's just what Leicester do. So we'll just, you know, it's hard to judge them. But at the minute, they're the sort of lowest level of concern I've got about the clubs. There's then Birmingham coming up, who we know are going to spend so much money. Have already got a fantastic squad. Have already recruited players who have no right to be playing in the Championship, players like Kyogo. So it'll be interesting to see how they are adapting and whether or not they're going to be right up at the top. And then Southampton and Ipswich, 2 teams who've come down, seem to be in really strong positions and look as though they're perfectly set to just bounce back. So I think United have to be in that cluster. We've got to finish in the top 4. We've got to finish in the top 4. I think that'll be the minimum expectation. We've then, if we are not going to get automatic promotion, it's got to be this time. At some point, we've got to win a playoffs. At some point, we've got to go and celebrate at Wembley. It's got to be next season because we've got to get promoted. And I think the owners will be clear on that's the expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope that's the case. Some quick fire questions because I know you've got to shoot off at 1:30, Ollie. So yes. 3 more questions from me. What's the biggest reason to believe in Sheffield United right now?
Next question. No. It's because the biggest reason to believe in United is that last season we were one of the... Well, nobody has ever got as many points as United got last season to not get promoted.
You accumulated 92 points.
Accumulated. Nobody has ever accumulated 92 points and not been promoted from the Championship. We are an outstanding Championship team that are going to recruit and get better. there's no reason to say that we shouldn't at least be able to deliver the same thing we did last year. And so that's the biggest reason, is we've got consistency. We've got no huge concerns. Yes, we've changed the manager, but the message is exactly the same. We've got the squad, we've got the players, we're going up.
Biggest reason for doubt?
We're going to sell Gustavo Harmer. That's the biggest doubt. The reason that I would lose faith in United is that we've already lost Vinny Souza, and we might lose Gustavo Harmer. And as much as I believe in what we're doing, I believe in that consistency, and I believe they're taking us forward. Last season was so successful because Gustavo Harmer is incredible at football. And so if we lose him, that's a huge hole that we've got to recruit well and replace.
Yeah, you do wonder about whether the club is trying to change too much and almost risk missing a lot of what's worked. So that there is that argument. Final question then. Too early for a prediction maybe, but give me a rough feel for where you think next season might be heading for Sheffield United.
I think we will finish in the top 4. I don't know which position in the top 4, but I think Sheffield United will finish in the top 4.
There you go. All right, Ollie. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to kickstart the weekly Championship podcast on Mondays next season. Thanks so much for joining me. And big plans for Sheffield United Way next season?
Yeah, more of the same. We're going to try and do a little bit more live, I think, because we felt as though we've got away from that a little bit. So we're hoping to grow the channel a little bit more. We're hoping to just get a little bit more interaction, get more engagement with the fans, but also sort of do a little bit more in terms of partnerships as well. We work really well with other teams across the Championship, and we just want to keep building it and keep delivering the best thing we can for Sheffield United fans.
Absolutely. Well, everyone go subscribe to Sheffield United Way. You can also subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube, Spotify, and we're also on TikTok now as well. So, yeah, thanks everyone. We'll see you again for another summer deep dive very soon. Thanks for watching.